Alrighty, guys. Good morning. Thank you once again for being here for this training session. Today is going to be the fourth and last session for this topic, testing and assessment in EFL. I decided to do something different. I know last week I told you today's lesson was going to be in assessing reading and listening, but I rather selected some other material that I found a little more interesting to share with you. So today's topic is integrating assessment in curriculum, syllabus, and activities. Right? So let's begin. So what are we going to consider in this session? We will consider how to assess in less conventional ways, such as using open questions, big questions, and collaborative tasks, rather than sit down individual tests and exams. We will also consider how to incorporate digital tools into assessment for a more dynamic classroom and how the degree of learning we achieve can be affected by different digital tools. Okay, so these are our objectives for today. I need a volunteer to read the 4 objectives for today's lesson. You can raise your hands.
I can do it, Daniel.
Go ahead, Julia.
Recognize the limitations and opportunities offered by different types of assessment. Number 2, adapt assessment to the needs of the learners. Number 3, encourage the use of higher order thinking skills in assessment. Number 4, include digital tools in learning and assessment to stimulate higher order thinking skills.
Thank you very much, guys. So hopefully by the end of the lesson, we will have these 4 objectives clear and some new ideas on how to approach assessment into our classroom. Okay. So we know assessment should be as objective as possible. However, one common problem is the belief that it is only achieved by using closed answers, which are either right or wrong. And from adding up these right answers, we can obtain a score. The score is then viewed as a true representation of the knowledge of the test taker. However, this narrow view is nowadays seen as insufficient and even inaccurate in today's changing classroom. Look at the following quote that we have here in the screen. Who can help me reading it, please?
I can do
Learning
it.
and succeeding. Okay, sorry. Learning and succeeding in a complex and dynamic world is not easily measured by the well-worn multiple choice response formats on simple knowledge tests. We need to rethink assessments, identify new skills and standards relevant for the 21st century, and then determine how to best assess students' acquisition of the new competencies.
Okay, do you agree or disagree with this quote? What are your comments on this quote from Becker? Anybody?
Well, I think.
Nico? Sorry, Nico was raising his hand.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I agree because, as we all know, many of the standards for evaluation and assessment come from centuries ago. Not even not even our century, but like 2 centuries ago. So we all know that the world is changing and work society is changing in this sense. And I think it's fair to say or to state that we need to at least examine how we evaluate, even if we don't change everything at the beginning. But it's fair to say that we should at least assess how we evaluate students.
Correct. Ella, did you have something else to say about it?
Yeah, it's mostly that. I think we need to kind of change the point of view of students towards the assessment we have in Jamestown. because they usually try to pass and not to evaluate how they are progressing in the program. So it's evaluation has been considered as something to be like evaluated with numbers and not with knowledge. So I think we need to change a bit that process.
Thank you very much. Yes, in fact, we need to rethink assessment and try to apply it differently. And that's precisely the aim of this lesson. So here we have the changing phase of assessment, and we have changing assessment foci. I know most of you are, as I am, a non-native English speaker, so I didn't know what was foci at first. And just so you know, is the plural of focus, okay? So the changing assessment foci. Who can please help me reading the characteristics of less focus on assessing that are on the left? All the characteristics that are on the left. Any volunteer?
Can do it, Danny, if you wish.
Hey, Jorge.
Okay, so let's focus on assessing learning outcomes, what is easily measured, discrete declarative knowledge, content knowledge, what learners do not know by teachers alone.
Thank you. Now we need to move forwards to more focus on assessing. That's the direction we need to be going in. Who can help me reading now the characteristics on the right?
I can do it. Learning processes, what is most highly valued, rich, authentic knowledge and skills, understanding and reasoning within and across content areas, what learners understand and can do, by learners engaged in ongoing assessment of their work and that of others.
Thank you very much. So achieving each of these goals may require many changes, and not all of them may be in the power of the teacher. For example, if a school syllabus is based on assessing learning outcomes, the teacher will have the obligation to test them. However, it might be possible to incorporate other forms to combine assessment with techniques to foster metacognitive development. In the next slides, we will see some ideas on how to do that in the classroom. Okay, first of all, what do you think HOTS are? What do you think? Any ideas? What can be HOTS? Well, we will see this in detail, but it refers to higher order thinking skills. Okay, higher order thinking skills are the ones on the top of the pyramid we're going to analyze. So some features included in the previous slide can be achieved with an increased focus on critical thinking, open questions, and collaborative tasks. Bloom's revised taxonomy provides a framework to visualize thinking skills from the basic level, which is remembering, to the most involved, which is creating. The taxonomy has been used for improving teaching from only memorization to incorporating higher order thinking skills, or HOTS. So with some simple rethinking and rephrasing, assessment can be transformed into using more HOTS than LOTS, or lower order thinking skills. So now let's look at the use of questions and how the simple rephrasing of questions can transform the cognitive skills required of the learner. Here we have using HOTS and open-ended questions in assessment. If you analyze this slide, we have the bottom one, which is remembering. It was the lower part of the pyramid, to the high part, which is creating. Okay. So usually we have two types of questions in the classroom. Questions that ask for specific knowledge, which are the when, the who, the where. These are used as comprehension questions to test the student's knowledge. And they often rely on the lowest thinking skills, or LOTS, remembering and understanding. Okay, those are the two at the bottom of the pyramid. They are frequently called display questions or yes or no questions. And they prompt closed, short answers. In this type of questions, the teacher often knows the answers already. Remember, when we ask when, who, or where, we are using lower order thinking skills, and we already most likely know the answer. Now, on the other hand, referential or open-ended questions that use critical thinking to look to expand knowledge, often what, why, and how, often use higher order thinking skills or HOTS. They might seek an opinion, an evaluation, or an analysis of a situation. They are referred to as open-ended questions, and the teacher does not know the answer. So what is the problem? The problem is that many test questions are limited to questions using lower order thinking skills, or LOTS. For example, multiple choice or short answers. On the other hand, referential questions or open-ended questions can provide new opportunities for learning and assessment, and can be incorporated easily into both classroom activities and assessment. In this chart that we have here, we can see examples of questions according to the thinking skills they stimulate that can be adapted to many different topics and areas. Now we are going to see something called using big questions, and this is also referring to HOTS. Just so that you can remember, what is HOTS? Anybody?
High order thinking skills.
And LOTS?
Low order thinking skills.
Very good, excellent, guys. So one type of referential questions are also called big questions. In recent years, they have been increasingly used in education. In 2013, Sugata Mitra held a TED Talk and won the prize of $1 million for the TED Talk of the year. Mitra's idea was, if children are allowed to wander in a chaotic fashion, they will crystallize around big ideas. His vision was to bring education to everyone and enable children to teach themselves. So we are going to watch part of this inspiring TED Talk, okay? Just play the video here and then share it with you guys. Just a second. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Yes, now can you please tell me if you can hear it?
Today, but we don't
Yes.
even know what the jobs of the schooling going to prepare them for that world. Well, I bumped into this whole thing completely by accident. I used to teach people how to write computer programs in New Delhi 14 years ago. And right next to where I used to work, there was a slum. And I used to think, how on earth are those kids ever going to learn to write computer programs? Or are they, should they not? At the same time, we also had lots of parents, rich people, who had computers, and who used to tell me, you know, my son, I think he's gifted because, you know, he does wonderful things with computers. And my daughter, oh, surely she's, you know, extra intelligent, and so on. So I suddenly figured that how come all the rich people are having these extraordinarily gifted children? What did the poor do wrong? I made a hole in the boundary wall of the slum next to my office, and I stuck a computer inside it just to see what would happen if I gave a computer to children who never would have one, didn't know any English, didn't know what the internet was. The children came running in, it was 3 feet off the ground, and they said, "What is this?" And I said, "Yeah, but it's, you know, I don't know." So they said, "Why have you put it there?" I said, "Just like that." And they said, "Can we touch it?" I said, "If you wish to." And I went away. About 8 hours later, we found them browsing and teaching each other how to browse. So I said, "But that's impossible. Because, you know, how is it possible? They don't know anything." My colleagues said, "No, it's a simple solution. One of your students must have been passing by, showed them how to use the mouse." So I said, "Yeah, that's possible." So I repeated the experiment. I went 300 miles out of Delhi into a really remote village where the chances of a passing software development engineer was very little. I repeated the experiment there. There was no place to stay, so I stuck my computer in, I went away, came back after a couple of months, found kids playing games on it. When they saw me, they said, "We want a faster processor and a better mouse." So I said, "How on earth do you know all this?" And they said something very interesting to me. In an irritated voice, they said, "You've given us a machine that works only in English, so we had to teach ourselves English in order to use it." I, that's the first time as a teacher that I heard the word "teach ourselves" said so casually. Here's a short glimpse from those years. That's the first day at the hole in the wall. On your right is an 8-year-old. To his left is his student. She is 6, and he's teaching her how to browse. Then on to other parts of the country. I repeated this over and over again, getting exactly the same results everywhere. An 8-year-old telling his elder sister what to do. And finally, a girl explaining in Marathi what it is and said, "There's a processor inside." So I started publishing. I published everywhere. I wrote down and measured everything, and I said, in 9 months, a group of children left alone with a computer in any language would reach the same standard as an office secretary in the West. I'd seen it happen over and over and over again. But I was curious to know what else would they do if they could do this much. I started experimenting with other subjects. Among them, for example, pronunciation. There's one community of children in southern India whose English pronunciation was really bad. And they needed good pronunciation because that would improve their jobs. I gave them a speech-to-text engine in a computer. And I said, "Keep talking into it until it types what you say." Okay. They did that, and watched a little bit of this.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
The reason I end it with that, the face of this young lady over there is because I suspect many of you know her. She's now joined a call center in Hyderabad and may have tortured you about your credit card bills. You know.
Very good, guys. As a homework, it will be a really interesting task to watch the whole video. It's really motivational and interesting information. Let me just go ahead and share back slides. So, what are your thoughts about this video? and also about this light. Can you explain the concept of soul based on the video? And are there any areas where you think we can apply this concept? So I hear your comments. Daniel?
Yeah, hello everybody. I
Hi,
think
Daniel.
I didn't say hello at the beginning. Well, I think that the concept is pretty easy. Is when you have an environment in which you create your own goals, which you set your own goals, in which you have the materials and you basically learn by yourself by what you have to do, and you design the outcomes that you want, whatever. I mean, it's like a free space in which you basically interact with the elements and get results in terms of um, well, for example, what the video was talking about, computing literacy. I think it's great because it's one of the things that we really need to learn um, in order to, well, to become um, successful people in today's world. So I think that that's the definition of the concept, in which it's like an environment in which you have the elements, in which you interact with other people, and in which you use basically all the HOTS that we were um, talking about in the previous slides to basically, I mean, learn and create in a community, because I think that's also an important part of this. And I believe that one of the classes that we could easily implement this would be clubs. I think that one of the problems we had in previous years is that, I mean, we had students in a classroom and the elements we had were papers and pens and everything. Basically that, I mean, those um, like traditional elements, but right now all students have a computer and all of them have access to at least basic processors and basic, hardware that can allow them to, well, to create really interesting stuff. And the only thing we need to do is to assign tasks or to create activities or to create, like an environment that allows them to create something new. So I think it's great. I mean, very inspiring, that video, to be honest.
Thank you. I am glad you like it. Anybody else? Nico?
Yeah, I think we can implement this kind of work in our training processes, both for students and teachers. Orientation, when a new teacher comes to the institution, sometimes, and it happens to all of us, right? We try to be very traditional in our way to train. So we teach them and we train them and they have to follow our steps. But as we can see, if 4-year-old, 6-year-old children can learn how to run a computer and know about processors and stuff, I think our students and our teachers won't have any problems learning how to manage, how to use a platform or program a class by themselves without us being there all the time to show them or to yeah, to train them in the classical way.
Very good. So here we have an example, guys, of big ideas or big questions. These are questions that the learners investigate with very little help from teachers. Sessions can be very short, from one class to many classes. However, it might be easier for both teachers and learners to start with more simple questions, as we can see below. So here we have simple questions. For example, where, who, or what, okay, is the largest animal in the world. So once learners are comfortable with researching simple questions, the learner can build up into bigger and potentially more complex questions. This process can often happen quickly if learners are given freedom to research and are encouraged to work independently rather than depending on textbooks and class learning. Try to avoid giving simplistic questions in place of big questions. Big questions naturally lend themselves to being researched in teams. Questions can be used in any area of learning and often end in a presentation of some kind where the students discuss their findings. The quality of the teamwork, research, findings, and presentation can be assessed. This type of assessment could meet all the assessment needs and uses practically all the thinking skills that appear in Bloom's taxonomy, especially those at the top of the scale, which are the HOTS. This is an example of a big question. So questions need to be thought about rather than invented on the spot and asked randomly, okay? So if we want our students to use HOTS, we need to previously prepare this kind of questions so we can foster this kind of metacognition. So now let's talk about digital tools. Digital tools in evaluation. We are going to combine here the Bloom's taxonomy with the use of technology. So there are many digital tools available to make evaluation more dynamic. In this section, we will look at the Summers model to evaluate how different digital tools may help us with learning and assessment. So what is the SAMR model, or SAMR model? The SAMR model consists on the use of how to use technology to enhance learning. So technology can replace more conventional methods to expose learners to a greater variety of learning possibilities. Using technology in the classroom can be divided into four categories. The first one, which is at the bottom, is substitution. Then we have augmentation, modification, and redefinition. These are the letters for the acronym SUMMER. So what is the first one? What is substitution when we talk about technology or technological aids in the classroom? Substitution is the most basic level. Here, a digital tool is simply substituting a more conventional tool. For example, using tablets instead of paper and pens. Okay? Here we are only changing one means of writing for another. We are not going to any further impact. The next one is augmentation. Augmentation will be substitution with functional improvement provided by the digital tool. Following the example of the tablet, let's imagine that a student now gives format to the text that they just wrote to improve the organization and coherence. When doing augmentation, we should ask these questions. Have I implemented a feature to the task that could not be done with the older technology? Now, what is modification? In this step, the use of this new technology enables the user to significantly redesign and improve the original task. Going back to the example, imagine that the learners are now recording audio clips instead of writing text. Okay, so here we are using something that could not be possible with the conventional pen and paper. The question we should be asking are, how is the original task being modified? How does this modification contribute to my design? And the last step, or the top of the letter in the SUMMER model, will be redefinition. In this last step, we can really use the technology to allow creativity to take over and transform learning in a way that would have been impossible with conventional teaching or learning methods. For example, instead of tablets, Our learners are using cell phones and created short films or recording videos. When doing redefinition, you should ask the following questions. Will it replace or supplement older tasks? How is this uniquely made possible by the new technology? So in the image that we have in the slide, we can see a more visual representation of the four categories and how they are connected to each one of the Bloom's taxonomy hubs. However, there is an important warning. Using technology in the classroom just for the sake of using technology may not provide the learning benefits that as teachers we might desire. Only substituting tablets for pens and paper or textbooks may not be as effective as we might hope. Substitution or augmentation alone may not be as beneficial to learning as modification and redefinition. We need to focus on the top two. As teachers, we can consider how HOTS can be combined with digital tools to really maximize both learning and assessment. Very good. So here in this very interesting image, we have a representation of the different actions and activities that can be incorporated into the classroom. The chart comes with examples of digital tools that can be used to stimulate the thinking skills. It provides an easy way to guide us with tools to use for planning learning activities and its assessment. It is worth it, guys, that you take a close look at the image as a homework, analyze all the different tools that are there and how we can use them, especially to implement HOTS in our teaching. So now we have here a selection of tools aimed for class use for more inclusive and active learning. We have 6, I think, on the slide. And I would like you to take a minute to read the comments on each one of them and then tell me which one do you find interesting. Let's take a minute to read them, analyze them, and then give me your comments. As soon as you're ready, you can start raising your hands. And I'll listen to each of your comments. Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I'd say that poll everywhere sounds like a pretty interesting tool to use. It would be good to see, it says that it works with Google Slides. So I think that it could also be implemented on Nearpod as well, because they have like a shared compatibility. So I think it's great. Well, especially, well, it's something that can be done with Nearpod, but not in that way. because this would show like all the results to everyone. And with Nearpod, you can only see the results of the polls on the questions as a teacher. So I think it would be an interesting tool. Also, the spelling check would be good for writing clubs as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Anybody else?
I think I'm drawn to the Mentimeter. Um, I really do like presentations, especially PowerPoint presentations when it comes to, teaching, and now that it's interactive, I think that's interesting because normally you just show a presentation and you can't do anything with it per se from the student's perspective. But with this, whilst you're teaching, the student can make comments, you can do polls, you can add images. So I think it'd be very interactive um, to have the presentation. It's like Nearpod, where they can actually in real time comment on what you're doing.
Anybody else? Very good. Here I have an extra list for you to take a look later on some other, the previews and some other tools that you can use for teaching or and also for assessing. And now we have our exit slip. I made this session a bit shorter because Nico is going to explain us something else. And so before we go, 2 stars and a wish. Give me feedback. Mention 2 things you like and 1 recommendation or suggestion for improvements. Anybody?
Hi everyone again. Well, I like today that you used a video, so that's good to like change the pace of the presentation, and that you provided us with a lot of things to check later on and increase our knowledge about this topic, and maybe things that we are going to apply in our classes in Jameson that are going to improve the process. And no, I really liked the whole thing. So no suggestions for now.
Thank you, David. Elaine?
Okay.
Okay, things I liked the video very much. We can use that for teachers with teachers. And I also liked the tools that were provided for classes and also assessment process. Recommendations for us all as an institution to focus the assessment on real learning and not just as a part of the program, not as something that is mandatory, but something that is necessary for the process and for the program as well.
Thank you, Ella. We have time for 1 more comment, Daniel.
Yeah, I think that video was great. I love TED Talks, and I think that I'm gonna I'm gonna watch the whole video. And yeah, that's one of the things, and probably one recommendation would be to have a way to get a record of the ideas that we have. I think it would be great because we have seen, like some possibilities for implementation of the ideas of these classes. So it would be good to have, I don't know if a document or something to collect ideas, so we can see if we can turn them into projects that will eventually become, something that it's going to be done in the future.
And just to add a bit there, it would be nice to, as a suggestion, to see how we could incorporate these things in an online environment, because the video showed us face to face, and most times when you do projects and you talk about having students work together. It's that face-to-face contact. How can we incorporate these tools in an online environment? Now that Jamestown is both online and face-to-face.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very good suggestion. Okay, thank you very much. This is it for today's session.